Hi, everybody. We'll get going in just a moment. We're still waiting for participants to filter into the webinar. So we'll just hang out for a moment as people come in. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get going here, and we'll let people filter in as they can. So good morning, and welcome to A/B Testing for Profitability. I'm Matt Ranta from Nimble Gravity, and today we're going to dive deep into the world of testing. We're going to explore how to use A/B in testing and to find that sweet spot for profitability versus just driving conversions or average order values up, maybe. And we just want to know that, testing's more than just about tweaking a button color or a landing page image, right? It can actually reshape business strategies, can help determine pricing, can even guide offer selection. And so we've got an exceptional lineup of experts joining us today. I've got Drew from Intelligems with me and Dave from Bambu Earth. So good morning, guys. Let's dive in. Maybe things off. We can go ahead and take a minute each, introduce ourselves, our companies, and what we do, and go from there. So, Dave, I'll kick it over to you.
Sure. Thanks for the intro, Matt. So I'm the president of Bambu Earth. We're a direct-to-consumer skincare company. We're a low 8-figure brand, pretty quickly growing, and yeah, we're native to the digital world.
Nice. And Drew?
I'm Drew. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO at Intelligems. We are a profit optimization platform for e-commerce brands. So we started by running price tests, do shipping tests, offer tests, all sorts of A/B tests, but generally with a focus on how to optimize the dollars and cents of e-commerce stores.
Nice. And so Matt Ranta, partner and head of practice for strategy with Nimble Gravity. Nimble Gravity is a consultancy that believes in the power of data, and we work across 6 different areas: data science, engineering, e-commerce, digital transformation, analytics, and BI, and then, of course, strategy. So let's dive into some kickoff questions, guys. Drew, what are some tests that you've seen success with, just various ones?
Yeah, I mean, price testing is what we're known for, in part because very few people had done it before. And so, what I mean by price testing is actually A/B testing different price points on a product and measuring what's the elasticity from customers. If I sell this for $8, $10, or $12, where do I find the sweet spot of like conversion rate and AOV? So that is very often successful. We'll talk about it a little bit later on, but almost no one we've worked with is like perfectly priced across a catalog. And, sometimes higher prices are the way to go. There's more customer demand to be taken advantage of and turned into surplus. Sometimes lower prices generate like really strong returns. So, and that checks, I used to work in the ride sharing industry at a ride sharing company called Via. I was doing like 9 figures of pooled rides, and like price testing was always our most powerful A/B test there versus anything in like the sign up or user flows.
Right. Nice. Awesome. Dave, what's your general experience with A/B testing? How does it fit into what you do at Bambu Earth regularly?
Yeah, so I've been in e-commerce about 15 years, and I've always been drawn to the tests that have a bigger impact on the business, and especially after running A/B tests for years and years and years, and changing a lot of the smaller things and not seeing the impact that a lot of kind of CRO promises and sometimes fails to deliver on. I get most excited by A/B tests that have the power to transform kind of like my underlying business. And so I actually got started with Intelligems on what Drew said that they were mostly known for, which was like the dynamic price testing of like this versus that, just the price testing on a single product. But I kind of quickly moved into going from that to just thinking about the kind of full, what I would call offer configuration And basically it's the full kind of deal that you present to customers, and it's inclusive of policies, it's inclusive of just what they have available to purchase, and what way they purchase it, how you structure the risk and all that. And what I found is that we'll go through this obviously later in our event here, but we've had some serious success with that, where it's been a step function in our growth and really unlocked new levels that we could drive the company to, by paying attention to those kinds of big tests that have the ability to fail, but also have the ability to drive what I'd call transformational growth.
Nice. That's great. All right, guys. Well, I think we're going to move on to the next section here. So I'm going to just pull up some slides in a moment and going to kind of quickly set the stage for everyone, make sure we're all talking about things from the same perspective. So I've just got a couple slides to tee up the rest of the conversation for today. So let's get those going. All right. Hopefully you're all seeing the A/B testing foundation slide, and not the presenter view. So we'll get into just kind of an overarching point, right? Today's digital leaders are winning by using experimentation at scale. And you've got some quotes there from Amazon, Netflix, Google, et cetera. Plenty of books, lots of research papers out there about these topics. So really, this is an area where you can truly move the needle, like has been discussed already. And in order to do that, right, you kind of need some tools. And you've got some big tools here on this page, right? You've got your Optimizely's, your Convert.coms, obviously Intelligems, but then you have other tools that kind of help you understand what's going on with testing, analytics platforms. You've got project management platforms, right? So you can write out test requirements, track how they're doing, track how folks are delivering assets for those. And while you might not need, the cream of the crop, so to speak, the top most expensive thing within the world of A/B testing, you do need some kind of tool, and that's going to be anything from one of these to others that exist out there that allow you to do this. I know you can do it in HubSpot, right? You can just test different pages, these kinds of things. And I think what I would also say about this is A/B tests don't necessarily have to be about your website and the user experience there. They can be as simple as something like an email A/B test, right? You can A/B test subject lines, these kinds of things. And that doesn't even necessarily require a huge platform. That just requires you being able to break up your email list, right? Do a 5-5-90 split, right? And just randomly select 5% to send to one subject line, another 5% for another, and you can go on and do some testing that way. So all kinds of different things that you can do there. And then, as we get into those types of testing, right, most of the time people are thinking about split testing. If you're talking about things like, just a button color, a picture, an image, something like that. You can get into multivariate testing where you're doing multiple iterations. You maybe have more than one thing changed on a page, and you can do multiple presentations of those different items. And then you can get into bandit testing. And if folks aren't even familiar with bandit testing, what that does is essentially algorithmically, as you're going along, it'll stop sending traffic to those lower converting, those lower producing test items that you're going for, and will start to really only serve the elements in a multivariate test that are actually performing and having an impact on changing your conversion rate, changing your AOV, changing these other things that you start to see here in the common KPIs, right? And these are common KPIs. I think we're going to talk about some KPIs here in a little bit that are a little less common maybe for folks in how they think about A/B testing. So I'm excited to dive into that. And then obviously, what's the value of A/B testing, right? You can improve user engagement. You can do risk reduction for future development even, right? You can A/B test ahead of actually producing code for an environment. You could just do a visual test of what does somebody prefer from an audience. And you can just, obviously do targeted incremental improvements for core functionality. And then we've got some considerations over here to consider for your A/B tests, right? You want to run a clean test, making sure that that on-site experience is consistent. You don't want to have, all of a sudden people go off to a secondary shopping cart or something crazy like that. You have to run it long enough to get statistical significance. And we can talk a little bit about that in a bit. That might take longer for others than it will for those folks with high traffic. And, in the world of e-commerce, we all want things as fast as possible, couple days, couple weeks max. You might find with lower traffic on some sites that you do have to run an A/B test for a longer period of time. And you're going to really have to focus on those things that are higher up the funnel. Obviously, there's no one size fits all. You might have different customer groups that have different experiences. I did a colored button test back, more than a decade ago at this point in time. And we, kept having arguments about, oh, red's going to win, no, green's going to win. And what we actually found is depending upon where you came from and the time of day it was, a different color could win and drive more conversion. You have to be open to being wrong, like Dave said, right? Like it's okay to fail miserably. You've learned something and you can take that and go and do something different. And then, we want to take big swings, right? There's nothing wrong with small improvements, but the bigger it is, the better your impact could be. And then obviously as a team, you have to know what the goals are that you're shooting for and make sure that you're all aligned in that fashion. So
Can I
dive in? Yeah.
Can I add one to your
for it.
list there, Matt, that I tell people all the time? Only test things that you would actually roll out. Like I can't tell you how many times we've seen test results. It's like the lower price wins or this really high price wins. And the client's like, oh, well, that's not feasible because the brand or retail considerations or this. It's like, well, why did we just spend traffic on this group? So just the sense check of like before a test, I love not holding your ideas too tightly, but then being like, if this one, would I actually roll it out? And if the answer is no,
totally
spend your traffic elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point, Drew. All right, so let's look at a couple actual tests that we've run as an organization in the past. And just going to talk about a client that we worked with previously. They sold flowers. They happened to power a large number of websites in the world of funeral homes, and they were looking for ways to improve the conversion rate of not only the sale of flowers, but they also wanted to do something interesting. You'll see here where they wanted to make sure that their service touches were prevented, and they wanted to make sure that there was a reduction in refusal rate. And so what happens in the flower industry is sometimes folks might order this particular bouquet, but the florist happens to be out of half of the flowers that they have to stick in there in the vase. And so they reject that order refusal, right? And then all of a sudden that creates scenarios where, okay, you have to go back to the client, the customer, and talk to them about the fact that flower arrangement that they picked out didn't work out for them. They have to pick out a different one. So really what they were trying to do in this grand scheme of things was they were trying to create value and interest around the florist's choice, where you're essentially giving the power to the florist to pick the flowers in the vase and make sure that it's a very nice presentation with very fresh flowers, right? And that prevents those order refusals. It prevents the service touches, et cetera. And so across all these variations, we ran a huge test and came out with some varying results. Any guesses from the panelists on which of these won?
Oof, this is always tough. Yeah, I mean, especially when I don't have an understanding of the business, it's like flipping a quarter. As far as like what's actually going to happen here. I'm probably going to go with just straight variant 2, best value, florist choice. And it seems to be the most clear, quickly digested. That's where I put my money, but I would not put a lot of money there. For the record.
Yeah, what kind of odds are we getting on this one?
Yeah. I mean, you got a 1 in 4 chance, right?
Maybe we
So,
should build a like DraftKings style marketplace where people can bet on
bet on
A/B
A/B
test
tests.
outcomes and then new revenue streams for everyone.
Yeah, I think people would lose a lot of money on that one. Yeah. So interestingly enough, right, there was some increase on that click through rate, Dave, on that one, but the detail page click through rate didn't have any uplift on that one. So it was actually this one with even more detail information in the image with some text below the florist choice best value. Yeah, and that drove site-wide margin increases of 6%. So great test, great outcome, really interesting stuff happened around that. And for the same client, we had some variance around not only planting trees and or doing things like sending flowers, but you can see that there's also an uptick in user participation on share a memory, right? So moving from having just 2 buttons, 1 button, a couple with variations to having all 3 placed right there drove tremendous uplift in the merchandising clicks, 46%, and 8% increase in margin per session. So, different tests can have different results. This is a pretty fast test, right? This is 30 days. So some interesting and fun stuff there. And last thing I'm going to do to kind of tee up the conversation and get people thinking about things is I'm going to throw a poll up here for the audience to go and look at. So let me go ahead and quit sharing, and I will throw this poll up. So here's your poll. Which is the better offer? 15% off of any purchase of $100 or more, or $15 off any purchase of $100 or more? So go ahead and submit your votes.
Better offer for whom is the question.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have. Okay, got a good number of votes in, almost the whole audience. All right, got some people that probably don't want to vote and just want to hear the outcome. So we'll go from here. So 64% of audience members and perhaps even participants on the stage here said 15% off any purchase of $100 or more is the better offer. And 36% of folks said $15 off any purchase of $100 or more is the better offer. So Drew, I liked your perspective of it. It depends on for who, right? You want to talk about that a little bit more and your thoughts on these 2 offers?
Yeah, I mean, like if I was a customer, 15% off everything would be better for me. It scales linearly with what I spend. For the business, it could be either, it depends on the level of customer uptake. It depends on, like John put this in the chat, but like COGS and landed cost, hard to say which is the better for the business without actually measuring. But yeah, as the customer, I would be like, I'll take the 15%.
Give me the percent. Yeah. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I'm almost certain the $15 off over 100 is the gross margin per session winner. You got a fixed discount. And so like, also in general, like you'd be surprised. Customers do jump for a dollar amount very often because dollar amount is like, they think in terms of like, oh, $15 is real money. Like, okay, I can go get a lunch or something with that. 15%, they have to do math and customers suck at math. And so like that caps your discount. So a $200 order, obviously, you're still getting $15, which is effectively a 7.5% discount. So my vote is most likely the dollar amount one here.
Yeah, I tend to side with you too, Dave, based on some past experimentation and testing around this, at least for that particular audience of the site I was running at the point in time. We found exactly what you're talking about, right? We found customers were buying at much higher than that $100 mark or whatever the dollar threshold is that you put on that, whether it be 250, 400, 500, 1,000, 1,500, right? We found that their purchases were typically not landing right at that point, exceeding that quite a bit, and you're getting that margin savings in that particular area.
And
But
Matt,
to the points made, yeah.
I have an anecdote about this. I have an experience. We actually used to run an offer. I had a client back in my agency days where we ran an offer around election day, and they so it was choose your offer, and there was a red offer and a blue offer, and there might be some like politics brain going on here where people just get dumber as soon as politics gets introduced. But one offer was a fixed dollar amount with a threshold. And then the other offer was a percentage. And so like, there's very simple math here that at a certain, let's say it was like $10 off over 100 and then 10%, right? There's very simple math here. Like at a certain point, I'm sorry, it was flat dollar amount or versus a percentage. At a certain point, one becomes better than the other. And I did a quick analysis on it afterward, and it was something like 30% of orders took a suboptimal offer. They took the offer that was worse value to their order size. So it's just like, it just demonstrates like how genuinely not good customers are at the numbers game, because it's a reasonably simple calculation to say, oh, at this dollar amount, it tips into the percentage, and the percentage is obviously better for me than the dollar amount. And customers just simply didn't do that math, and 30% of them placed a suboptimal order. Again, that might be politics brain because they chose like making it even worse. But I think it just demonstrates that you can't just design an offer and say, well, this one is superior to that one to the customer, therefore they're going to like it. The truth is that very often isn't the case, especially if you're forcing them to do math, because customers are really terrible at that.
Totally. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
All right,
there's
guys.
Some real psychology there.
Yeah. I'm going to kick it over to the two of you. I know you've got a co-presentation on how to drive some metrics that really matter for e-commerce businesses, and going to share some real test outcomes. So Drew and Dave, take it away, guys.
Yeah. Let me go into slideshow mode here. Can you guys see the slideshow?
Yep, you're good.
The full screen version. Great. Cool. So yeah, we're talking about A/B testing for profitability today. Wanted to give some perspectives that we've seen throughout our course of running tests. I'm not here to shill Intelligems. I think a lot of this is doable like on your own and with free tools, although less so now that Google Optimize is going away. But just to like establish a little bit of credibility here, we've run more than 1,000 experiments on e-commerce sites about dollars and cents. We found about $200 million in extra profit. We ran probably 2,000 tests in the ride-sharing industry before that. And, in our opinion, we should always, with like only the rarest of exceptions, be looking at profit outcomes from tests. And there's a lot of temptation to look at the top line and want to see that growing. I think a lot of that has been kind of washed out of the e-com industry in the last couple of years with all the rising costs. But if you take away one thing today, it's that you should be measuring your A/B tests based on profit. So our favorite metric, what we are always trying to get to, is profit per site visitor. Whole bunch of ways. It could be profit per session. It could be margin per visitor, gross margin. There's all kinds of other names this could go by. But the basic measure we're trying to take is, hey, we have a visitor on the site. We've paid for that person to come here through an ad, through an email send. In some way, we've driven that traffic. How much profit can we expect to make from them? Like, how can we lay out this store in the way that is going to maximize their expected value? And that breaks down to like two components. So there's, your profit per order. So what was in their cart of the people who checked out? how big was that cart? Were they high margin items or low margin items? Did they buy more and I am now paying more for shipping? Have they contributed shipping? So what are the characteristics of orders that are coming in and how profitable are they? So AOV, average order value, minus any COGS, minus shipping and fulfillment fees. And then we multiply that by our conversion rate. So, hey, what percent of people ultimately purchased from me? Of these 100 visitors or 1,000 visitors, how many did I convince to purchase? Did I put the right items in front of them, have a compelling offer? So it combines these two, like looking at conversion rate on its own, not that helpful. I've seen stores that are not doing well with 8% conversion rates, stores that are crushing it with 0.75% conversion rates. Similarly, like profit per order tells you only one part of the story. So this is where like we are trying to get, it's normalized. It helps you track across channels, different size groups. There are like other metrics that we may look at depending on what's available or the particular type of test. So, revenue per site visitor, which is this, but one step further up before we take out the costs. We often want to look at lifetime value. That can be harder to get at, but maybe you're testing a subscription offering or like Dave, I know you just tested a membership offering. We can look at the immediate outcomes. So we ran this test for 3 weeks. What happened to conversion? What happened to AOV, to profit, and to profit per site visitor? And we can make a short-term decision based off that. But with a membership, maybe we're investing up front and we're hoping that people are higher value over time. Or maybe we tested a steep discount on a subscription order. Everything looks great up front. We got way more subscribers. We think they're going to provide a bunch of LTV, but it turns out when you threw a 25% discount on the subscription, you just brought in promo seekers who then churn immediately. So that can help us get like a different time frame window here. Return on ad spend, like, Dave's going to talk a lot about offers, but that can be valuable. So, product mix, there's a whole bunch of other things that can be relevant. Dave, I'm curious if there's any like metrics that are missing here or stand out to you that you either track on. I know you have like spreadsheets where you track all the results from tests.
Yeah, no, interesting. I have 2 points to make on this, which is the profit per site visitor. So like, obviously the inputs that you see and have is a gross margin level. And so for those in the audience that are financially savvy enough to know what that is, that's your revenue minus the cost of delivering to the customer. So we call it the full, delivered margin. So minus both the shipping, the pick pack, transactional fees, et cetera. And then since you're holding constant the distribution of traffic, right? So you're holding constant the cost of bringing the customers there. You're actually able to get down fully to a contribution margin level, which is your gross margin, then less any direct ad spend, which is really the most bottom line that you can get without considering fixed costs. So that's that you can think about it in marketing as the marketing's bottom line, so to speak. So that's one, that profit per visitor really gets down to that contribution profit per visitor. And then two, you can include this lifetime value by slightly tweaking the equation that you have here and just changing the word profit per order to profit per customer.
Yep.
And then ultimately what that's doing is looking at your initial gross margin plus future gross margin over whatever time period you define, right? You could say, I'm looking to maximize our return over a 60-day window, 90-day window, 1-year window, et cetera. And so for me, I do exactly what Drew is talking about, because we're a brand where we basically make 0% contribution margin on the first order. And then I have about, 100% increase of AOV to LTV over the course of a year or so. So if they came in and purchased a $100 order up front, they spend another $100 with me on average, blended average across all my customers over the next year. And so what I'll do is we'll run an A/B test with Intelligems, and then we'll export the data. And you've got, you have an order ID, which you can marry up to an email and then go track that customer over a longer period of time. It takes longer to run that kind of a test. That's maybe the most frustrating thing. Is like you can't have LTV without the weighting, right? So like I'm still sitting here waiting on June. We ran a June test, and you're still like, okay, now we're starting to get the full 60-day LTV in there, and we're starting to barely start to scratch the surface of 90-day LTV, and it's like, well, it really takes a long time to see that. But a nice indicator is you can also just see, hey, in the first 30 or 60 days, how am I relative to plan? Meaning, am I up 20% consistently in month 1 and month 2? And you have reason to expect that can continue. So a good portion of this is you're going to need additional signals that say, hey, this is smart. You can go implement this. You know that in 30 and 60 days that you're up by 20%. I have them in a membership, a recurring thing. You can look at your retention rates on the membership, and you can make a determination that is not entirely, you go outside the typical like frequency statistics to make a determination that says, yeah, I believe this is headed in the right direction for the other 300 days of the year. So you do have to make some extrapolations there, but ultimately at the end of the day, it is worth doing. And I like that you guys included the Munger quote here. But I think this is a great point, is that there are actually people who don't price everything as high as the market will easily stand. And once you figure that out, it's like finding money on the street. I think that's a perfect analogy. And one other thing that you said earlier, Drew, you just quick offhand comment. You said, I'm not sure you would spend your traffic on that. You thought of traffic almost like a currency. Mm-hmm. And if you're not spending your traffic on future intelligence about greater profit, then you're discarding it in a way. And so thinking about spending your traffic on buying intelligence that can drive higher profit is an interesting way to frame the way you think about A/B testing, and really just what we're doing here is we're purchasing intelligence that is going to be used to run a more profitable business over the next, X number of years that you operate it.
Yeah. I thank you for making what I said sound smarter. But the way that I express like testing programs to people and your success is like, it's going to be a function of a couple different things. There's the odds of any given test winning, what's called a coin flip or less. Mm-hmm. There's the expected impact from those tests, which is where like the bigger the swing, more potential impact, maybe slightly lower odds of success. Right. And then there is a function of like, how effectively can you use your traffic? Like how tightly can you pack? How many tests can you fit in a given time period? And the traffic levels, let's like call them exogenous, they're fixed. Mm-hmm. So can you have a good roadmap, like spend on things that you would actually roll out, and like use all of your traffic towards future intelligence, do that. Like so many people miss that part of like taking for granted that they could be testing right now. And then it's, hey, all right, can we like line up big swings, and then can we be learning stuff to juice that like odds of success metric and change it from a coin flip to, hey, this is actually like an educated hypothesis.
And let me go. There's two kind of criteria that I use, like determining like, am I going to put this test on my roadmap? Because like we could just like put together tons of tests and just constantly have something running, at least something. But actually, there's many times where I am letting my traffic go unspent, so to speak, because I'm working on the technical implementation of what I consider a more important test. And so the two criteria I use, I don't think I've run a test with you that I don't believe that we could have driven a 20% improvement on profit per session, defined in some way. And I've been, doing that with Bambu for the last 18 to 24 months. And we've had a couple breakthroughs because of that. And so to me, one thing is, first of all, you're almost always going to overstate what's possible. So if I believe a 20% is possible and a 10% comes out, great. That was still a significant shove in the right direction. If I am testing something that I believe is going to have a 5% difference, first of all, a 2.5% difference, the amount, this isn't talked about super often in testing, but when you're using the statistics to determine, is this better, is B better than A? If the difference is smaller, you need a much greater sample size, dramatically so. So if you're shooting for a 20, 30, 40% increase, the sample size that you need is dramatically less. So it's interesting if you think about the traffic and the opportunity cost of like spending that traffic on intelligence, and I'm going to shoot for a 5% test, which might need 3 months to come out conclusively, right? And then like it might even have problems replicating. I've rerun tests that are small improvements and they don't replicate because a 95% confidence is still 95% confidence. Like it's possible that there's a long tail to that. And so I'm always worried about those sorts of tests, whether it is a genuine improvement or not. So I always aim for something like a 20% plus. And then the other thing that I'll do is I'll run just some logical scenarios against it and with like offer modeling. So we could talk about this when we get to is the next slide our A/B test by any chance? Because that'd be a good segue.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Let's table it.
Yeah, but some offer modeling that just says, does this pass sort of a sniff test that this could potentially be a 20 or 30% improvement? And just beating that up a little bit and saying, do I really believe customers are going to jump at this offer? How many do I need to take this big kit versus this small kit? Oh, I need 60%. Is that really realistic that I'm going to triple the order that they're going to place and that's what's going to be, my savior in this? That's maybe a crappy test. Shelf that. Oh, I only need 15% to upgrade their offer and then that'll be a significant upgrade for me. Yeah, I think that's a very easy hurdle to clear. So it's running it through sort of a sniff test like that to make sure that that what I'm going to test with.
It's like here's what I would need to believe for this group to be a winner. And does that seem at all possible? Cool. I want to get to the offer testing stuff, so we'll skip through these next pretty quickly. On your typical e-commerce store, when we talk about price testing, there are actually dozens of factors that go into pricing. It's not just that MSRP, the strike through price and the first time offer that you're throwing in front of the customer are going to impact their price and likelihood to convert and the profitability of that order. Your shipping rate and shipping threshold, even like content, the imagery, the copy, how well is that resonating? Does it create a higher perceived value? Are you doing bundling or cross-selling? Lots of different things to test on the site that do have a direct impact on that profit per visitor basis. And I would argue that even stuff like changing copy, you should measure with that same metric. This slide, totally made up example. Basically, we work with a lot of clients who are really scared of raising prices. It goes back to that Munger quote. They're worried they're going to raise the price. People are going to reach out. They're going to be pissed. They're going to lose their customers. Business is going to shut down. This chart, this person's operating at a 10% contribution margin. A 5% net price increase. Maybe that's coming from reducing a discount, increasing a price. Maybe it's coming from even getting rid of free shipping. That's going to improve their profit per order 50%. So they can afford to lose 50% of conversion and still net out even on profit and probably have a much easier business to run. There's obviously a lot of caveats here, highly stylized example, but the point is you're probably too worried about raising your prices if you were to go do this quick model of hey, if the same number of people bought at this higher price, how much more profit would I be making? And then how much conversion could I afford to lose? And this is just an example of how some of that math, it's not intuitive at a high level, but when you're changing prices can break down. So, let's say we're selling a very expensive hat, $50 for $70. We're testing this on 1,000 visitors. We lose a quarter of our conversion and a quarter of our orders when we raise the price. Sounds pretty terrifying. Like you go into the dashboard, you're like, oh shit, we need to end this test. When we look at a revenue basis, it's actually pretty close to break even. We're making that extra $20 per order. So across the 15 units, we're now making 1,050. Not a big change, but slightly higher than our control group revenue. When we look at the gross profit basis or contribution margin, to Dave's point, would be another level below this, we are making so much more profit on each order because we have $20 extra of revenue coming in and our cost hasn't changed. Our profit per visitor has gone up 35%. Now, like, this would be an amazing outcome. This was obviously a pretty steep price change that didn't totally crush things, but just goes to say, like, conversion rate, even revenue are not going to be your goal metrics on these sorts of tests. Profit per visitor, like, moves in its own way. It depends on your cost structure, your previous margins, and that's where we should anchor. So, like some interesting data points I referenced earlier, like very few people are just set up optimally off the bat. So 93% of our customers who've worked with us for a couple tests, and that's like 250 brands, all shapes and sizes, 93% of them have found a new optimal price by the time they've run their third test. So very few people have just thrown the darts and have nailed it right away. We find very similar results on like shipping schema. And are you at the right threshold? Are you charging the right rates? I want to talk a little bit about offer testing and pass it over to Dave there. So like pricing, great. It's clear. There's a lot of stuff on shipping you can do, a lot of stuff on layouts and how things go. Dave, I think, is like the leading expert in the world, certainly on the Twitterverse, about like how to use offers for big swings. So Dave, I'll pass this to you. I'll just tell me when you need to change slides, but about some of the things that you like to test in terms of big swings. And then we'll dive into the test example.
Yeah, good point. So actually, this is a great point. I think over the last 18 months, we've run at least a dozen plus tests with you guys, and I think there's only been one or two with MSRPs directly, and all of them are offer tests. And so people very often forget that that to me, offer means kind of the full deal that you're giving someone and the full like conditions under which you're presenting that deal. And so, product assortment first and foremost is super, super important. What product are you putting in front of them? How are you pairing it together? How is it available? I mean, like low hanging fruit is like collection sort. If you're of a store with like a couple hundred SKUs or thousands of SKUs, and people have to go through your collection pages or category pages to purchase, the assortment of that page, is it manually curated? What, is it bestseller logic, et cetera? So what is the logic that you're using to sort that? Offer configuration, and this is like, there's a lot of different ways you can go. You can choose flexibility. So in the case of like, again, an apparel brand or a brand where customers are going to want to shop a high amount of variety, and there's like a high number of permutations of possible orders, you'll want to have something that allows a lot of freedom. And like a conditional $15 off over 100 is a great idea there, or a gift at a certain threshold is a fantastic idea there. An example of one that we run consistently is we give away a mini version of our products, so like a 2-week version of our best-selling product, most popular product, for orders over $50. And it says, okay, like here's a version where it's like, go pick whatever you want in our store. As long as it adds up to $50, we'll give you our bestseller with it. And that also has the added bonus of like, you just tried our best-selling product, pretty much no matter what. So there's also, offer configurations where I'm in skincare. I can put together a lot more, like, here's a good routine, start with a cleansing oil, cleanser, toner, moisturizer, et cetera. Like, this is a routine. It could be a personalized routine or just a standard routine, but that I've lumped together and said, this is a standard bundle that makes sense. So bundling being under here. Risk reversal. So again, part of the whole equation is risk versus perceived risk versus perceived reward. And you have the benefit of running these transactions tens, hundreds of thousands of times. So you get to see how the numbers shake out over a long period of time, whereas customers jumping into this are going to run this transaction once, especially up front. I just found this brand on Instagram, and I'm going to decide whether I'm going to take the leap for this one transaction. And they may be irrationally worried about, is this a good product? And how your return rates, function with this product. And so it might be worth putting 100-day return policy or 90-day return policy, a super strong return policy around it, because now you can just go see what the back end of that is. Like, what is the impact of that? And in my experience, the marginal difference of people that will return between 30 and 90 days is relatively low. And so, a lot of people that don't like it right up front. They don't wait till day 85 to make the return. So it's a relatively low risk test that you can take, and then you can emphasize that risk reversal significantly.
Dave, I want to make sure we get to the actual test example, and particularly your chart on contribution margin impacts, and have time for discussion. So
Sure. Let me go super quick. Opt-out and purchase pathways. Opt-in versus opt-out. Are you automatically into a subscription, or you need to opt into that? So that's opt-in versus opt-out. Play with that. Purchase pathways. Lock out the navigation. The only thing you can buy is this kit. Versus drop them on a collection page. Let them serve. I think it's worth testing. In both directions across all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, totally.
So I'll give some quick context for this. This was the second test that we ran on our. We push a lot of our folks through a skin quiz where they fill out a bunch of questions. They tell us answers about their skin type, and then they get dumped on a personalized kit. So your custom kit. The first test introduced this full size option that you see in the image. So there was a mini. Mini previously was kind of our starting point, our control. We introduced the full size, and all of a sudden. The mini, let's say on this kit would probably be about $70, $65, $70. The full size about $160. And we added this text right below it that says 2 weeks supply, 3 months supply. On that first test, we added that full size, no impact on conversion rate, and about 30% started taking that full size. So like, wow, okay, overnight revenue per session increase. The full size kit is better margin for me, et cetera. So the second test that we followed up with Intelligems is, okay, let's try to push that take rate on the full size kit even higher. So we have 30% taking it right now. What can we do to incentivize it further? And so I took a product that is $118 value, relatively low product COGS on it. If it's not shipping alone, because keep in mind, I'm already paying the costs for pick and pack and shipping and whatever. So it's relatively low product COGS on there. And we attached that to the full size kit and made a big deal out of it and said, free iDuo with full size kit. And the take rate on the full size jumped up from 30 to 52%. Right about there. And the profit per visitor jumped up about, close to 20%. And the gross margin increased a little bit as well. And so that was the second breakthrough on this kind of offer funnel that we had, and it was able to drive yet another sort of breakthrough in terms of profit per session that we were able to leverage back into our ad spend.
Yeah. And what's like the mini, when you were just selling the minis, I see 160s for the full size here, but what's the price point on the minis?
That for this kit, it'd probably be like about $65, $70. Yeah. So dramatic jump up in terms of AOV. Like we were able to take AOV from around that like $70 to around 105 on the initial order.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. And then I'll kick this to you on how it helped with.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one thing I bring up, a few times is that, if you have a successful A/B test, you laid out a bunch of math where it said like, hey, profit in like the control versus profit in the test, and the profit goes up with the test. But the interesting thing there is that you've just increased the rate that you are converting visitors into profit dollars. And very often, when you're spending on Facebook, you're kind of fixed on this blue line. Absent other changes, breakthroughs in creative or breakthroughs like this, you're on this blue line. And you, as a media buyer, anytime you can decide a point on this blue line. And so I could go spend only $100,000 a month, and I can travel on that blue line backward, and you can see it's a little bit lower on the y-axis in terms of profit or contribution margin. Or I can go spend $300,000, and you can see that that's once again a little bit lower. So I've kind of over time found the optimal point on this blue line. But what you do is you now have a breakthrough, and you just jump to the red line. So you could pull this dot directly upward, and that's what just immediately happened. So instead of you netting, I think it's 77,000 is the data I put in here. You're netting close to 150. But now you have a new line on which you can sample new points. And so what this means is like you're more profitable per session. So now you can go afford higher CPMs, you can push outward, and you can spend more on your ad budget. And you find a new sort of apex of contribution margin. So in this case, you're able to push from the apex being 175K a month in spend to 300K a month in spend. And so this is fictitious data that I mocked up, but we actually did do this. We went from about 125K a month in spend. And then after both of these tests, we averaged 350K a month over all of H1 this year at a better return on investment. Better ROAS. So ultimately the apex or the contribution margin from that was dramatically better. So this is often not understood, that it's the way I like to say, Drew, is the profit increase you see in the dashboard is actually your worst case scenario, because the worst case is I jump up to the red line and I take it exactly where it is. My best case is that I go find a new apex that is even better because I made my site more profitable per session.
Yeah, it's like CPMs are not going to go down at any point soon, probably. So by having that higher profit per visitor, you can actually then afford higher CPMs. You can spend more, beat out competitors, find a new.
That's right. Yeah. And so I was another way I think about it is like your as an advertiser, your ability to translate impressions into margin or margin per thousand MPM is your insulation against rising CPMs.
Awesome stuff, guys. Really, really appreciate that, and great conversation. It sparked all kinds of questions for me, and I've got a couple, but I know the audience has got at least one question in chat, and I'd encourage them to go ahead and type out more questions either in the question area or the chat that we can ask. One thing on my mind right away, Drew, is like in a price test, does the in price always have to be higher? You mentioned finding lower prices that weren't maybe tenable to the actual testing entity, but can you get a lower price sometimes that actually drives more profit for you?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually seen a shift. We were looking at some historical data, and we've run, I think, like 900-ish tests just on list prices. 2/3 of those we found a winner. That's not the control group. So we're looking at this set of winners. In 2022, 2/3 of those were higher prices. Or late 2021 to our first year of tests. So higher prices were more likely to win. When we look at the last 12 months, since last September, it's actually flipped, and 2/3 of price tests have ended with a lower price winning. My anecdote on top of it is I think people had to really rapidly raise prices.
Sure.
With the rising costs from late 21 through 22. And then you have some wavering consumer confidence. No one has the stimulus checks anymore to just spend on stuff. So customers have been more elastic and responsive to discounts. But yeah, I mean, especially if you have high margins, that example with a 10% margin, structurally, you're much more likely to win with a higher price group. But if you're operating at 70% margins, you have a lot more to play with. And a 10% decrease with a 12% increase in demand is probably going to net you more profit. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Dave, I'm gonna throw you an interesting question that came to my mind while you guys were talking, and it's around how do you not contaminate tests, right? Like, how do you make sure that your test environment is actually clean and that your marketing department isn't all of a sudden activating a new marketing channel and driving some really trashy traffic into, that isn't going to convert, that's going to throw off that cohort, that's going to throw your test out? Like, what do you do in a real environment to prevent that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's definitely a real concern. And like one thing I'm very transparent about is like with our whole marketing department and customer service department, when a test goes live, like everybody knows that, and everyone's been briefed on what the test is. In fact, actually, customer service, my head of customer service, I have them review test pages often before they go live, just around like FAQs, and like it's a new offer, people are going to have new questions, and they're the ones who field the questions most often. So I actually typically have them review that. And so like, they're always super aware of that. But yeah, I mean, even like big events, like, we'll have a big sale or something like that. You want to avoid like one of those massive peaks. You want to test during a more evergreen time period, or at least separate that out in the data. And so like, even if I run it through, like, let's say like President's Day is like a big peak for us. I might exclude that and like, just set the date ranges, excluding that time period in Intelligems to see what the evergreen impact is. Just because I don't want to make sure I act on something that is only good during a big like revenue peak or a big sale moment. And so I think that's important as well. But yeah, I think transparency to like what tests are coming up and what tests are running, and having teams have visibility into that is really important to make sure that we're not stepping on toes, that people understand the policies, and soup to nuts.
Awesome. Yeah, some definite good practices there for sure. So we did have a question earlier in the chat that was, do you see a customer acquisition cost increase on paid when you make a price increase of say 20 to 30%? And I'd love to hear from both of you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll share the way I usually think about it, but Dave, this is a question I probably should ask you a while ago. So we have 2 price points. We just raised it 20%. Conversion rate is presumably going to go down somewhere between 5 and 30%. I would expect, like, under the hood, you're paying for the same amount of visitors in those groups. Like the CAC is going to be higher in the higher price group because we have same amount of spend, lower conversion, therefore like the cost to acquire any given customer is going to be higher. And that's where like getting to the contribution margin answer, like Dave said, is important. Let's just like take out the marketing spend as we're going down that breakdown and see what performs better. But it's kind of like we spent $10,000 either way. Like CAC is just a divisor or a function. I do think so. That's like the blanket assumption we make. It's like, hey, that shouldn't change the answer of which we're better on profit per visitor. It more just changes the absolute number. I do think like this is where you get into the black box. What is the Facebook algorithm doing? Like, and Dave probably has a lot more experience where at like very different price points, you can probably unlock different audiences, which are maybe much harder to acquire or much easier to acquire. So it's not exactly like a balloon squeeze trade-off.
Yeah. So like what I would say about this, the first thing I weigh in on is the cost per acquired customer. Like the test we ran, we actually held conversion rate constant and then just moved AOV up and gross margin up. So like in that case, like the cost per acquired customer held steady on that blue line, right? Like we talked about, but then we intentionally moved the cost per acquired customer up to the red line because we could afford it, because we were producing more gross margin per customer, up front there. And so that's part of like that decision to like pour it back into ads, because it's going to find a new apex if we do that. If you're holding your conversion rate constant, your cost per acquired customer is going to be the same, because you're essentially splitting the traffic 50-50. So if we go back to Drew's early example where he had all the dollar amounts laid out and it was like $1,000 of revenue in more or less either case, let's just go ahead and add like $500 of ad spend on each of those, right? And so like both are $500 in ad spend. And so yes, there was 20 acquired customers and 15 acquired customers. So like the actual cost per acquired customer is going to change, but no matter how you slice it, what got better is the gross margin divided by ad spend. So you had 500 in gross margin and 675, right? So like that 675 over 500 is obviously better than the 500 over 500.
Yeah, even though the CAC is going to be $6 in this group and $5 in this group.
And then for anybody sitting there, we're like, yeah, but acquired customers like have an ongoing value, et cetera. The way you still just equate for that is like take like gross margin on the initial order plus gross margin future still divided by that ad spend, right? Mm-hmm. Because like ultimately that's the thing that matters. Like the cost per acquired customer doesn't honestly matter long term. Like the amount of gross margin that you're able to generate divided by the amount of spend that it takes to do that is essentially your real return on investment from advertising. So in some cases, it may move the cost per acquired customer. In other cases not. But as long as you're holding those things constant and focused on the profit, again, that may include for you as a brand, like you may need to pull in, after the fact profit. But you could just run the numbers on that and see where you come out.
Nice. Yeah. So another question from the audience, and this kind of goes to the contamination conversation we were having, but a little bit more sophisticated way of talking about it. How does a price test on a Shopify store affect the price of the product on other channels, such as a Facebook or marketing DPA ad that it would include a price? Like, what are you doing in that scenario?
Great question. Usually, we're going to send the highest possible price to the feed. That's just like the safe thing. We don't want to send a lower price to any feed where there's a risk of someone clicking, sees a higher price. Now it's like, oh, is that false advertising? So send the highest price to all the feeds that you're dealing with. There's then like a whole realm of targeting and exclusions. So we can take that traffic and say, hey, leave them out of the test. They're going to contaminate the data. Or even like what we have a lot of customers do is build a particular funnel and say, hey, I changed the image talking about a 15% off sale in this ad set, force them into that test group, and then this copy force them into that test group. So there's all kinds of like UTM logic you can build to tie like top of funnel creative or emails, ads, whatever, with then the test group that someone's put into. But it is, it's tricky. It's detailed work.
Yeah, you don't want to contaminate your results on the lower price, right? By showing somebody a higher one, they come in, see the lower one, think they get an advantage from a mistake or something, and
exactly
contaminates the data. Yeah, Dave, you have anything to add around that?
Otherwise, I was just going to say mostly the same. Like you never upset anybody by having a lower price. Like it never creates customer service problems when we charge a lower price than advertised. And I've never run into that. So like that's just a good standard, and then you'll. For the price test downward, you may have a volume increase at the point of advertising if you adopt that. So like if it's a wash, you might look at it and say, okay, well, I know, in my advertising feed, I'm saying $20 right now, and like Google Shopping is like critically important to me, and I'm testing $20 versus $15, and it's super close. I may get more volume at the click level with a $15 showing that up front. That's a contingency that you just can't control. It's outside of your control. So that's the one thing that I would say, like you might weight slightly heavier towards like a $15 price point, because you're going to get some click-through rate bump in either DPA or Google Shopping because you're showing that lower price point in the future.
Nice. Well, guys, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, our audience, and both of you. We've run just a couple minutes over, and so thanks for your participation, and thanks for the audience, everybody chiming in with questions. I think that across the intricacies of price testing to the broader landscape of just general A/B testing, today's hopefully been a fairly insightful dive into how you can maximize profitability while honoring that customer experience. So. Big thanks to both you, Drew and Dave, for your insights. And, I think for the audience, whether you're a startup, a seasoned business, somebody who's just intrigued by data-driven decisions, hopefully we, had a session today that equipped you to experiment, learn, and thrive. We at Nimble Gravity, we're always here to help and support businesses in these kinds of endeavors. I know Intelligems is ready to support your price testing. And I bet Dave would absolutely love it if you all hopped over to Bambu Earth for some completely natural skincare product purchases, like right after this, right? So the window will all shut down here in a moment, but thanks to everybody. Take care. And I'm going to say goodbye. And Drew and Dave, any last words, feel free to
Yeah, One thing I would flag is price testings are specialty. Google Optimize is shutting down in 10 days, which is like the free general A/B testing solution. We can also do all of that stuff. So find us, ping us if like you need general testing and personalization solutions. And otherwise, yeah, follow us. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Sounds good. Go buy some.
Follow Dave on Twitter.
Natural
He's
skincare.
a great follow.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks again. See you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.